What's up, guys? This is Maverick here, and welcome back for another episode of Monogatari Monday. Yeah, it's just a thing, right? It rolls off the tongue, so I'm gonna stick with it. Anyways, in today's episode, we are going to be concluding the Nekomonogatari Black series, arc, whatever you want to call it, and with that, the first season of Monogatari as well. Now, courtesy of the dialogue between Araragi and Isari Neko last episode, we learned a lot more about Hanekawa, right? Who is honestly the most intriguing person of this series. Well, actually, sorry, I don't think that's quite correct. Araragi, to me, is the most intriguing person of this series, and with Hanekawa being a close second there. But it's definitely something that I've had in my mind ever since the very first season with Bakemonogatari. And, well, it seems that she is apparently a robot in human flesh, right? Now, obviously, we're only going on this through the words of the Isari Neko, so there could be more to the entire situation. Is it by birth, naturally, or is it because of the circumstances with her family? That's something we'll explore further, right? Now, personally, I am kind of, even though I guess it's not really a good thing, I am kind of happy that we get this kind of development because I feel like it makes the characters more interesting, right? And it makes the story more compelling for me. But in any case, we already know how this arc is going to end. Shinobu's going to suck the life energy or whatever energy out of Isari Neko. Everything's going to return back to normal, and then we continue as usual. But let's see how they get there. Alright, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Oh, by the way, I am actually changing my subs to a fan subbing group, Girls. I'll hold that thought. I'll talk more during the opening. Okay, he's going to try to convince Shinobu to help him, right? Alright, and here's the opening. And so, yeah, due to some comments from you guys in the past episode, I think, who was it? CQQ, I believe, was your name. Mentioned that you didn't really like the subs I was using, which were the official Blu-ray subs. No, I used Girls before. And I use modified Girls before. Personally, I do enjoy subs more when they retain more of the original meaning rather than being localized. Especially being someone who at least knows a little bit of Japanese as well. I do like to try and try to take the original meaning into comprehension. But yeah, typically, since there were some comments in the past that said the official subtitles were also pretty good, that's what I was using. If most of you guys prefer I use Girls still, I will use Girls. Right, and I still don't know why she has a guitar here. I mean, I guess it matches with the music, but... Kick. Hmm? Our sword? What was it called again? Heartspan. It's nice that even though she's changed into that, she still has her normal abilities. That is a super long sword. The Metal Cat? That's a pretty interesting translation. I wonder how Ashino was able to get this information. isn't that just gonna... I think that's just gonna enrage him even more. Yeah, I kind of agree here. Mhm. うん。Yeah. Spitting the truth here. Yeah, there's definitely a reason why Oshino is probably my favorite character from the series. Okay, so she was like that since birth. Really. That's the correct answer. But no, seriously, why is Hanekawa so adamant on staying with her parents? Like, obviously the best thing would be for them to separate. Obviously it's wrong to blame Hanekawa on everything, right? But it's like blaming the sun for being hot, right? At the same time, I think it's reasonable to take countermeasures against the sun. By the way, I just want to say, I think Araragi's pose is cool as fuck. Ah, cool as heck. I think so too. because he's just an observer. No, it's cool, but that sword is impractical as hell. Oh, they're coming? Hmm? This is like... Huh. But... how does that actually work? So they're sort of like a merge of each other? I don't doubt that. So for the past, was she human? What? So what's your point, Araragi? No, he just wants her to acknowledge herself. Hero. Daikirai. Why does sun change here? She wants to die and oof. But that's not enough to kill him, right? Man, how much abuse does Araragi take? What? His blood? Oh. What the fuck? He's able to do that? Damn, that is effing metal. Well, she only knows what she knows. Seriously, what other kind of series would have all the humor and whatnot, and then have a scene where a dude was just cut in half? He has a point.
かに触り猫は退治できるけど、羽川の抱えるストレスが克服できるわけではないし、家庭の不和がなくなるわけでもない。こんな解決でいいのなら、押野は多分最初の1回で決着をつけている。さっき押野が言いかけた2つ目の忠告とやらは、きっとそういうことだったのだろう。
So actually,
それでいい。
a comment from another viewer was right. Oshino was actually still stronger than
お前のために
Sarineko,
それだけなんだ。
even with her advantage and all.
妖刀によって羽川と触り猫が分離されたことで統合に不具合を起こしている。何やってんだよ猫。羽川を傷つけてどうすんだ。お前が羽川のためにあれこれ手を焼いてくれたのは、羽川が路上で死んでいたお前に対して全く同情をしなかったからじゃねえか。僕の時もそうだった。吸血鬼に襲われ人間ではなくなってしまった僕に対しても、羽川は決して哀れんで見下したりしなかった。対等に見てくれていた。そうだろ触り猫。路上で死んでいようが吸血鬼に襲われようが、僕たちはかわいそうなんかじゃねえよな。お前もそんな羽川のことが好きだ。
That was the point?
だからそんな風に羽川を襲うのはよせ。やめろ。やめてくれ。やめてください。
アホかこの重木は。乱暴な電源の切り方をしたらマシンが傷むのは当たり前じゃろうが。わしの自慢の名刀を無茶な使い方しよって、とんだ怪異の息づくりじゃわい。笑ってしまうわ。
That's gonna help him recover, right? Whoosh. Instantly. Even with clothes and all?
目の前のことしか見えておらんなこの重木は。わしを勝手に生かしておいて勝手に死ねると思うな。アホが。手本を示してやるからそこで見とれ。見とれとれ。よいか。怪異殺しとはこうやるんじゃ。
Oh. Alright, yeah.
いいよな。いいよな、羽川。僕たちみんなろくでもないけど、すっげえ不幸でめちゃくちゃ報われなくて取り返しなんか全然つかないけど、一生このままなんだけど、それでいいよな。
いいわけないでしょ。
I'm. Hmm. I'm not gonna comment on anything right now, but that was definitely a very interesting process and conclusion. Well, I mean, the conclusion I knew about, but I'm not sure everything they said actually made sense.
学校に行く前に寄るところがある。
Right, so what happened with Hanekawa's parents and whatnot?
さて、これでは撫でられない。
ああ、それ吸血鬼ちゃんにねだられてさ。まあ結局、猫のことは彼女が全部解決してくれたようなものだから、
Helmet?
あげたんだよ。
当てが外れたというか、儚い希望だったな。ところで押野、羽川のことだけど、大丈夫なんだろうな。
まあ大丈夫だよ。それは保証する。委員長ちゃんはこのゴールデンウィークのことは何も覚えちゃいないよ。ブラック羽川としての記憶は
Black Hanekawa.
完全に 長ちゃん自身が強く願って自分から離れかけていた猫を引き戻し、さらには取り込んだというのが正しいのかな。その瞬間、新怪異ブラック羽川は誕生したというわけだ。星野、新種の妖怪っていうならよ、羽川はずっと家族という名の妖怪に疲れてたようなもんじゃねえのかな。家族ね。でも委員長ちゃんにとってご両親は家族じゃなかったんだろう。だからこそさ、羽川にとっては家族ってずっと怪異だったんじゃないのか。
Her idea of family was an aberration for her.
でもな、猫になったところでどうしたところで羽川は羽川のままなんだと思うと、やっぱりいろいろ考えちまうんだよ。結婚しちゃえばいいじゃん。はいやだから荒木くんは委員長ちゃんと結婚しちゃえばいいじゃん。
It seems like literally every single person is pushing him together with Hanekawa.
悪い冗談だぞ、星野。
Every single character.
いいアイディアだと思うけどね。春休みに委員長ちゃんから手を差し伸べられた恩返しとしては妥当な取引だ。
Fair trade.
羽川の気持ちってのがあるだろう。そりゃあるだろう。気持ちがあるから見せられるのさ。被害者にも加害者にもなる、怪異にもなる。だけど荒木くんの気持ちってのもあるんじゃないのかい。僕の気持ち、僕はてっきり荒木くんは委員長ちゃんに恋しちゃってるんじゃないかと思ってたけれど。
She's gonna be like, no.
言うなよ。僕は羽川に恋しちゃってねえよ。そうかい。そうだよ。そういうことにしておこう。それが一番幸せだ。
Why?
荒木くんがいいならそれでいいよ。まあ聞いてはみたものの、荒木くんの気持ちより委員長ちゃんの気持ちが一番大事だからね。触り猫が何をしたところで、荒木くんが何をしたところで、人は一人で勝手に助かるだけなんだしさ。それに羽川は助けなんて求めてないしな。僕に求めてくれちゃったらよかったのに。羽川が頼ってくれたら僕は何でもしたの。案外求めてたのかもしれないけどね。あ？助けてって言わなきゃ助けを求めたことにならないわけでもない。
Yeah.
って言わなきゃ好きってことにならないわけでもないように。軽はずみに言えない言葉は誰にだってあるよね、荒木くん。不安なんてない。
This is.
いつも通り笑ってくれる羽川にいつも通りに笑い返せると確信している。だって僕は羽川のことを好きでも何でもないんだから。あいつのことを好きだなんて一生言うことはないんだから。
What? What?
羽川さん。
Okay.
いつかお前以外の誰かを好きになるだろう。お前以外の誰かを生まれて初めて好きになる。人を思いやる気持ちをお前から教えてもらった僕には、お前以外の誰かと恋に落ちる日がきっと。
You taught me how to feel for others? I guess those that aren't family?
お前が忘れてしまったこの黄金色に輝く9日間を僕はいつまでも未練たらしく覚えていて、きっと忘れることはないんだと思う。たとえこの先どんな未来が待ち受けていようとも、どんな将来を迎えようとも、お前に対して抱いたこの気持ちは決して変わらず、なかったことにはならないのだから。そんなわけでこんな風に高校3年生のゴールデンウィーク、18歳の5月、あららの恋人の初恋ではない何かは
Which is literally today. Or yesterday.
階段を登る。
And then immediately meets Senjugahara? Is that how it works? Alright, is the ending of this episode gonna be any different? I think. No, doesn't particularly seem to be different. Alright, I'll just take a look at this myself. I'll see you guys after this, I guess. Well, anyway, see you guys in a second. Alrighty, guys, we made it through the end of Nekomonogatari Black, and that means the conclusion of the first season of Monogatari. So, where to begin here? This was yet again another episode where lots of things can actually be discussed, and I think one thing that's becoming more and more apparent through this series is how it actually kind of encourages us to have different interpretations of the situations and of the characters as well. I'm not even quite sure if the author himself has one single truth in regards to all this, and I think it's kind of being made apparent by such as the introduction of the characters Kagenui, Kaiki, and of course Oshino, right, who represent, I wouldn't even say good, evil, and neutral, but maybe more, if we're using the sort of D&D alignment chart, right? More like the lawful version, the chaotic version, and the neutral version, right? But basically what I'm trying to point out here is that I don't think it's a coincidence that there's these three characters represent three different viewpoints being put into the anime, or being put into this work, and I feel like even us as viewers or readers are supposed to judge the situation based on how we more align with things, right? So say for instance, in my case, I actually align very strongly with Oshino. I think I mentioned this all the way back in Bake already. He really cemented being basically my favorite character in Kizu here. So I really find myself agreeing with Oshino's points most of the time. I like his position more, even if he does come off as a little bit I guess, heartless, in a sense, if you could call it that. But, yeah, I do like the way how he represents himself and how he basically is saying, well, even though you have your opinion of what is just and what is right and whatnot, that is just your opinion, man, right? You also have to consider the other side as well, such as in this case with him calling out Hanekawa's situation here, right? Now, this is something that I actually strive to do not only in anime but also in real life as well. I mean, it's definitely not something where I'm not going to say that I don't have strong feelings about things, right? And indeed, I could lean one way or another depending on the circumstances and whatnot. Adopting a neutral position here doesn't necessarily mean that I adopt no position at all. It's just that I kind of understand that there's always going to be someone with a differing opinion, and that's okay, right? I'm not going to concede my point unless you are able to convince me. But at the same time, I'm not going to be trying to bash your head in and try to convince you as well. We can agree to disagree here, right? That's basically been my philosophy in life since the past 10 years or so, let's say. But yeah, and back to the episode at hand. It's not a case where I don't feel bad for Hanekawa, right? That's I think it's one thing to feel bad for her character. It's another thing to be objectively identifying the root cause of all these problems. And I think Yoshino hit the nail right on the head. You know, in this entire situation, the true oddity out there is actually Hanekawa herself, right? She is simply transhuman in a sort of way with how she is, right? And I think it was also, indeed, it was already hinted at in the last episode, and that was already when personally I was, if you guys heard my opinions from the last episode, that was also the point where I was like, yeah, it is kind of creepy that this is a very with this sort of very automatic kind of morals or behavior and whatnot. So I used the term robot-like to describe her. I guess that's not entirely correct. It's more saint-like, I guess you could say, although even more to the literal sense of the word and not just as a descriptor. But indeed, it does seem that, you know, inherently she is the problem, right? Now that's not to say that that what she's doing is wrong, right? Like the example I made within the episode itself was, you know, think of the sun, right? Obviously the sun, there's nobody who's going to argue that objectively the sun being here is important, right? It's literally the how we can exist as life. At the same time, if you are going to be let's say for instance you had no shelter at all and you would be underneath the sun, and let's say the sun never sets, you would be underneath the sun without any clothing, without any shade and whatnot, 24/7. Oh, that itself is still torture, right? So there's no it's okay to acknowledge the sun being a problem, and yet at the same time acknowledging that it's very, very important, and it is there's nothing wrong with its existence, right? And I feel like that applies to this situation as well. Obviously, it's not like the best example here, but give me a break, okay? And indeed, one of the things that's still probably my biggest question that I want to ask, in even within all this, is why is she so insistent on staying in that household, right? I think the problems could literally be solved if she just moved out or something, right? I really don't get why this. It seems to me that it's a pretty obvious solution to all this, so obviously someone is trying to insist on something, and in this case it's most likely Hanekawa, right? I think I brought this up last episode as well, and I'm really baffled as to why she's continuing to take this abuse and build up the stress, and at the it's to the benefit of no one, right? Her family hates it, she hates it. Nobody's going to be happy in this situation, so why not just strike a sort of compromise here and choose the best outcome, right? Indeed, the sort of explanation I tried to justify for Hanekawa in the last episode was perhaps it's part of her entire spiel of trying to be an ordinary person, right? But at the same time, you could argue that even her existing in this household within this sort of context and situation, that is already extraordinary, and so it's a moot point anyways, right? So I don't know, that's still probably the biggest question I have, just because it seems to really solve all the problems here, right? Alright, and then going on to the battle, if you could call it that. So I already mentioned at the beginning, right? We already know the outcome of this. It's going to end with Shinobu sucking the energy out of the Sarineko. Of course, it's the process that's what we're looking forward to, because it's definitely hitting us with some surprises. And I would absolutely say that this, I guess I should be expecting this by now, that there's a lot of these kind of gory scenes and Araragi is going to end up being mutilated in some sort of way. I feel like that is sort of the recurring theme here. But still, once you see it, it's still kind of a shocker, right? As I said within the episode as well, I don't think I've really seen any other series that has this much comedy and absurd humor and, ecchi stuff and whatnot, and yet still have scenes where you have someone cut in half and literally dying, still giving a sort of compelling speech towards the whole situation is just ridiculous, right? And I don't think I've seen anything quite like how this series is portraying all these different situations. So it's definitely interesting and entertaining. Although I guess we can't really be. It's not as shocking anymore, let's just say. So I think by this point I've kind of grown accustomed to it. The fact that it happened in this manner is surprising, but I don't think it's shocking to the point where, oh, what the hell is going on, right? Because we've seen Araragi in the similar situations before, and also we've seen that, obviously being the main character, he still ends up alive at the very end there. And the whole situation between Araragi and Hanekawa, right? I feel like simultaneously I understand Araragi a little bit more, and yet at the same time I also still, I think I mentioned this all the way back in Kizu already. He's still a very illogical person to me. I really can't figure out like what his entire MO is, let's just say. So I can kind of get that. Okay, why Hanekawa and Araragi are so attracted to each other. I mentioned this in the last episode as well. It's sort of like someone with no feelings versus someone with basically all the feelings all the time, right? Always on versus always off. So these sort of opposites are attracting to each other like magnets here. And indeed, it was confirmed within this episode by the words of Araragi as well, right? Teaching. Although I guess you could kind of argue that this was already mentioned back in, I believe, back in Kizu already, right? The fact where the existence of Hanekawa is sort of like a savior to Araragi. Although I think here it's made much more clear what the meaning of this is. Right? What is the exact what is the object that we're talking about here, and it's the sense of having feelings for others. I think in Araragi's case, I think the others in this case refer to anyone outside his family, because I feel like even within Neko, we see that he clearly takes his sisters seriously, and it doesn't really reek of a person who has no feelings for other people, right? At the same time, however, I feel like I also kind of understand him in a way where I think it was mentioned first, again by some other viewers as well, and how Araragi is inherently selfish. And I feel like in this episode, I finally truly get that, right? Because as we can see, the entire goal that he has is basically wanting to kill himself. I think that's the easiest way to put it, right? That's literally it. That's literally his entire reason for doing all this in a way, killing himself, and in a way that suits him. Let's just say it's not just a simple matter of committing suicide. It needs to fit his own criteria as well. That actually takes precedent over anything else, any other kind of benefit that this situation might actually entail. Right, and I feel like, especially when looking at Araragi here and knowing that he has this sort of tendency, I think we need to also bring the concept of the unreliable narrator here, which is a common trope in literary works, but I think it works in anime, and, well, I mean, Monogatari is originally a light novel after all. But basically what I'm saying here is because typically in these sort of anime or shonen or whatnot, we're prone to looking at things through the main character's point of view here, right? Of course, the main character might be flawed or whatnot, but by and large, at the end of the day, when things are settling down and then there's a conclusion being reached, typically that is the conclusion here. But what I'm saying here is that I feel like even the sort of very matter-of-fact things that Araragi is stating aren't necessarily true. Maybe only true from his perspective, right? But that is actually not, if I use another sort of example here, we can also say that the main character is sort of like the voice of the author as well, right? What the author is trying to express to us. But in this case, I think there's actually a dissonance between these two, and I don't know, I feel like we should be looking at all these sort of inner monologues of Araragi in another light here, and not necessarily, I mean, on one hand, we do know that he likes to joke around, and sometimes he likes to say things the direct opposite of each other, or try to hide his words and meanings, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact, I'm talking about the instances where it seems that he is, really truly stating something to be true, and he's not lying to himself. He's just he truly believes this, but maybe that in itself is untrue as well, right? And like I said, the inherent selfishness here is made apparent by basically Araragi admitting it himself, right? He already said as much. Even if he dies here, nothing is going to change. The status quo is not going to change. He sacrificed himself, and maybe, right? It's not even a guarantee that he would get this iteration of the Sorry Neko out of Hanekawa's body or whatnot, or contain it in a way, but that's still not solving the problem, right? So once Araragi is gone, what about the next time that this happens to Hanekawa? What about the next time she suffers, right? But it seems that Araragi isn't actually truly doing things for her sake. You guys understand what I mean? Even though he wants to die for her, that ties in back with my entire thing about him selfish being in a way that he just wants to die in the way that he considers, in a way that he likes, in a way that he wants, basically. And it's not really a case where he's dying this so that he can solve this problem once and for all. So, and I guess this also applies back in Kizu as well, with the entire situation of Shinobu and Araragi as well, and etc., right? But I feel like with this episode, it's becoming more and more clear that this indeed, it's kind of funny, and in a way to think of Araragi as selfish, considering he's doing a lot of what normal people would consider very unselfish things, right? Literally putting his life on the line, and going through all this sort of torture and whatnot for his friends, for the people he interacts with and all that. But at the end of the day, I feel like indeed, when we boil it down, it is actually acting from a very selfish kind of position here, and so that is quite the interesting thing here as well. And I also find it very ironic, just because considering that the person that wants to die so badly is actually granted powers of near immortality, right? Now, obviously, it's kind of weakened here, but still, he. I don't know. I just find the situation ironic as well. Though I guess it would be the only way for him to survive for all this, considering his tendencies of suicide, of wanting to die, right? If he didn't have this sort of ability, I think the story would be over pretty damn quick here. So I guess it's an important prerequisite of this entire story taking place in the first place. And so yeah, and that is that. What else? Another thing that I've been thinking about for this episode, and indeed for the series in particular, is I do kind of wonder whether the entire series is actually a metaphor for not quite. In the past, people have said, okay, it has some sort of philosophical kind of stuff in it, and I can definitely see it starting from Nisei, and then here in Neko with the entire situation. Again, back to Kagenui and Kaiki and Oshino, right? I kind of get that point of having different philosophical views here. But I think another thing to consider here is maybe this is a metaphor for mental disorders here. Like all the oddities and whatnot, it's just a like maybe it's just as Kaiki or indeed as Araragi somewhat said in this episode, right? The aberrations, the oddities don't really exist. It's just a figment of people's imagination, etc., etc. They're all metaphors for different kind of mental disorder, right? For Araragi, my gut feeling is depression, actually. Even though he seems like this sort of carefree character and all that, depression has lots of different kinds of manifestations, right? It doesn't literally mean that you act depressed all the damn time. So I don't know. I just kind of feel like, especially considering his tendencies and all that, he is suffering from severe depression in a sort of way, and I guess that also ties in with the fact of Hanekawa being the sort of savior here, right? Because indeed, for people with mental disorders, those that can bring them out of the situation can very well indeed be considered as saviors, right? I think it's well documented by now, this kind of relationship and situation. Beyond that, I can see also maybe bipolar disorders or cognitive dissociation, those kinds of stuff also being related with what's happening to not only Araragi and Hanekawa, but also all the other girls, all the other heroines of this series, and so on and so forth. So, I don't know. I feel like that's also an interesting sort of take on the situation, and it actually kind of makes sense if you think about it, right? So, lots of things to think about, and lots of things to talk about as well. And which brings me to my last point here. So, the continuation of the series. So, back at the beginning of Neko, I said that I was planning on putting this series on hiatus for at least maybe a month or so, or a season, just because I want to get the other stuff. I have other stuff I want to watch, and I feel like I've been watching Monogatari for way too long now. Don't get me wrong, I love the series actually, but still, you kind of want to change your taste sometimes, right? However, after thinking about it for a little while, it seems that the story is just beginning to really pick up, right? In the past, it was okay. It was comedy, it was ecchi, it was funny, and all that. But I feel like, especially since Nisei, the latter half of Nisei, and now in Neko, we're really starting to get into the core concepts of each of the characters, and beyond just very superficial kind of stuff, right? So I do kind of want to continue to dive on to this, and since I already coined the term Monogatari Mondays, well, I guess I can just continue to go forward, right? So immediately after this, we're going to be watching the second season of the Monogatari series. I believe the next arc is more specifically called Nekomonogatari White or Nekomonogatari Shiro. And yeah, so anyways, that is that. Let me also know if you guys have a preference for me using the official subtitles or the Kogoro subtitles, or if there are any other subtitles that you want me to consider. Again, I understand it's hard to satisfy everyone. I'll do my best, alright? And, well, I will see you guys next week as well for the next arc. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. This has been Maverick signing off, and bye bye.